Oh, hi! Didn't see you there! Welcome to BruTalc. I'm Mike. Jack, you might know from the very, very first BruTalc and Powder videos. We were making fun of Game Grumps when, like, JonTron was leading that show. You were JonTron, and, like, during our Let's Play, you said, Aaron, I'll be right back. I'm just gonna be right back. I'm gonna step out of the room and I'm gonna be right back. So we're just gonna play this game here and Aaron!
I'm gonna be right back.
You're gonna be right back, John?
I'm gonna be right back.
Okay, John. Okay. Alright, John's gonna be right back, guys. Just stay tuned for these commercials.
That happened this decade.
Yeah, it did. That was the moment of the decade. You can stop watching the video here. But wanted to bring Jack into this video so we can talk through the best games of the decade, going year by year, basically. What I would have thought the best game of the year was at the time, and then looking back, how have those games withstood the test of time? What now would I consider the game of the year for each year along the way? So, welcome to the BruTalc Network Studios. This is our garbage can where we get all our ideas. 2010, at the time, I would have absolutely said Red Dead Redemption was my game of the year. It blew me away. I was 16 years old in high school. And at the time, I had never played a game on a console, especially, that looked that good, that sounded that good, that had that level of just detail in the animations, and the story blew me away too. Everything about Red Dead 1 was just fucking phenomenal, and it still is. But, like, looking back now, I'm really not enthusiastic about going back to replay Red Dead 1. Part of that's because I'd have to hook up my Xbox 360 again, and that's a nightmare in itself. But it's also just a very cutscene heavy, like slow mission heavy kind of game.
It was kind of like this awkward phase in video gaming where you could say that Red Dead was kind of the first theatrical game, like even before The Last of Us was really popularized as being like a movie game.
Mm-hmm.
But it was kind of in the awkward era before they had the technology to make competent cutscenes and things like that. Like that didn't really happen until after LA Noire. And they had the good facial capture and things like that.
Yeah, I see what you mean. Like, before Red Dead, they were obviously making GTA 4 and Vice City and San Andreas. And those had a lot of cutscenes, and people look back on those affectionately. I don't. And Red Dead is where you started to mount the curve, where it no longer was you're playing along because it's these janky 3D models being puppeted, and it really started to feel like a human kind of performance. LA Noire, I think, was really the one that nailed that almost too much with the very detailed jowls moving on the characters.
They just put all the game's budget into that, and that, like, there basically was no interesting story as far as I can remember.
Right. Unlike Red Dead 1, LA Noire wasn't actually a 10 out of 10 or close to it kind of game. It was alright.
Yeah.
So that's what I would have picked at the time in 2010. Red Dead Redemption. Game of the year! Nowadays, it's gotta be Fallout New Vegas. Fallout New Vegas is the best game that came out in 2010. Every once in a while, I'll get that itch to just start another New Vegas run. You have a lot of freedom in how you build your character. The dialogue is good and interesting. I don't get bored of the side quests. It's just a great game to go back and revisit. And considering the resources they were working with, they really did put out a game that will last pretty much forever. And mods have further expanded the life of the game to be something greater than anything they put out in the first place. So Fallout New Vegas is my current pick for the best of 2010.
And Obsidian really put all of the work into making that a good game. Like Bethesda provided the engine.
Yeah, pretty well.
And that's
a whole story.
Yeah. Like it's not even the reason why the game is fun. Everybody fucking hates the engine. Like if Obsidian made the same exact game without any of Bethesda's involvement, it would probably be even better than how it turned out.
Probably. They wouldn't have had the tech, but they've made their own. They've done that this year with Outer Worlds.
Exactly.
Or 2019 with Outer Worlds. Like, Obsidian is a good developer, but they were put on a shoestring budget. They were told to use Bethesda's, honestly, dog shit development tools that they still use today, which is beyond baffling. To the point where to make trains move in Fallout 3, they just put a model on a train as a hat on an NPC buried underground and have the
Really?
NPC walk to move the tree. That's how it works in Fallout 3.
I didn't even know there was trees in Fallout 3.
There's like one, but it's like the enclave. Whatever. We're kind of off track. Fallout New Vegas, game of the year.
Fallout New Vegas.
At the time in high school, I would have said Portal 2, game of the year. Still a great game. Portal 2 is still a great game. At the time, though, I was salivating over it. The whole like ARG that they had on Steam, where you'd like get all these different indie games, and it would like help you unlock the game globally earlier by like a day.
Oh yeah.
Like you made the game come out early. They had obviously planned for this. It's not like, oh shit, we're still working on the game. I hope the players don't release it early. It's just kind of a marketing gimmick, but it was fun. And the game itself, great music, just from a gameplay point of view, straight up expansion and improvement over everything that was in Portal 1. It was actually like a full-length kind of game, unlike Portal 1, and was just a really worthy follow-up in pretty much every way. I still love that game. Portal 2 is a great game. Before I move on, do you have anything more to say about Portal 2?
Like, what Portal 2 did really well is kind of take the small little snippets of information you're given in Portal 1, like finding the secret little alcoves where people have been trying to survive within the research center. And it kind of expanded on that in a way where it could still make a story out of it without really trampling too much over what made Portal's atmosphere good.
Yeah.
Like, it didn't destroy GLaDOS's whole subject name here, subject hometown here, sense of humor by making a bigger story out of that stuff.
Very much a fan of Portal 2.
Mm-hmm.
But it was not the best game of 2011. In retrospect, that is absolutely Dark Souls. Dark Souls is the best game that came out in 2011. You're probably not going to agree with that. He's not a Dark Souls guy, but Dark Souls, I first played in 2014, I think, like as they were leading up to the release of Dark Souls 2 and people were talking about it more. That's what got me interested in the first one. And then I played the first one before Dark Souls 2 came out. And that was like, whoa, I see what everyone has been talking about. Once you get over the initial hump of figuring out what the hell you're supposed to do, and you get the basic timings of when you're invincible, when you roll, and how to explore the world without getting completely lost and confused, it's just downright impossibly compelling. The story is great. Every area is like beautiful and huge and unique. There's nitpicks with Dark Souls 2. The second half of the game, bit of chaos, lost Izalith, but none of those flaws can really diminish the additive value of the titan that is Dark Souls. And it's left a shadow over the rest of the decade too. Like, still some of the best games that kept coming out were part of this series or made by this team, and you'll see that as this video goes on.
Well, there's no doubt that it's a good game or that it's an influential game. I mean, like, there have probably been, 2-3 dozen games that have came out in the past 5 years where people have referred to it as a Souls-like game.
Souls-like experience.
It's a Souls-like
The deep Souls-like lore.
Yes, lore.
The lore of the
lore.
Souls-like blood.
I don't know. I've never been a fan of Dark Souls, personally. I think what it comes down to is just my enjoyment of single-player versus multiplayer games. I feel a lot more, less wasting my time when I'm playing, like, a multiplayer game for multiple hours.
Well,
as opposed to a single-player game where I'm not denying the sense of accomplishment. It's a difficult game. It's a solid challenge, but like, I don't know, something about tackling that by myself or with limited multiplayer involvement. It's
got multiplayer, but it's not like multiplayer first.
Right,
but
yeah.
The multiplayer stuff, even though it's from Demon Souls, it was still so cool and innovative. The way that you could use multiplayer as a kind of difficulty setting. And if you just need help with a specific part, you can summon one of your friends.
Yeah.
That stuff is cool, but it's really not a multiplayer game, you're right. So yeah, opinions are opinions, and I get that you have your subjective take on this game, and that's valid, but objectively, Dark Souls 1 is the best game of 2011.
Objectively.
Scientists have proven it. with facts and logic. In 2012, I was graduating high school, going into college, and my favorite game that year was Dishonored 1. Part of that is probably because I had never really played like a legit classic stealth game like Thief. So that was my first experience with something like that. And all the cool like teleportation powers, the blinking, the different outsider abilities, they were all just awesome. And they really made an interesting kind of world to play around with all these powers in a sandbox. And you could be violent if you wanted to. I never really found much fun in that because it was just so easy. Otherwise, it was a cool world, very interesting story, and the teleportation powers is what sticks out to me as like the most compelling feature of that game. I don't know, something about just being able to like blink up to a surface and like crouch down and jump down. You know the Tetris effect people describe?
Yeah.
Where you play Tetris a lot and then you start seeing things in sort of Tetronimo blocks in the real world. I had the same kind of thing with the first Dishonored, where like when I would be walking to class and stuff, I would imagine like blinking up onto that building or like just zipping across rooftops.
Yeah, you're really a true gamer.
True gamer through and through. But
real life Tetronimo effect with Dishonored.
Well, it's okay. Bully. This guy's a bully.
It's nice. The game's combat has a really cool like sandbox appeal to it.
It does.
Where you can kind of just do whatever the fuck you want.
Yeah. In retrospect, though, not my favorite game of the year. Hotline Miami is the best game of 2012. I didn't play it till later, till like 2013 or 14. It came out late 2012, and goddamn, that game just has such a unique vibe to it. The gameplay is really tight and really fun. The music, I mean, that's maybe the best part of the game is the music.
Oh yeah, I have the soundtrack like separate in my music library.
And the story, it's bizarre, it's unsettling, and honestly, I just think it's still better than Hotline Miami 2 in most ways. Hotline Miami 2 improved some things and added some things, but it also messed with the level design in ways that weren't great. Hotline Miami 1 was just the Goldilocks point of got everything just right.
For whatever reason, it seems difficult to make a game in that style. Like, because one came out recently. Or actually, I don't know if it came out recently or if I just found it recently, but it's called Police Stories.
Oh, yeah.
And it's in the same
I was watching you play that, yeah.
Yeah, it's in the same exact art style as Hotline Miami. You're a cop and you got a partner, and you can, like, play co-op locally or online. And you're going into buildings, Hotline Miami style, and clearing rooms, arresting suspects, things like that. But I don't know, it's so shitty in comparison to Hotline Miami. The multiplayer doesn't work at all. You'll get kicked out constantly. You desync with your teammate, so like if they open a door, it will still look closed to you, and then all of a sudden you get shot by a guy who is in the other room and you can't see him.
It's annoying.
Yeah.
That sounds like Hotline Miami 2, except instead of a desync and not being able to see the enemy, they'll just be off screen and able to shoot you. 2013. This was my freshman year of college. I was playing Fire Emblem Awakening, building the most eugenically perfect collection of children for my anime units. It was a lot of fun. I had a lot of fun with Fire Emblem Awakening. It's cool, but it had serious problems. One of the worst of which was the map design. They were all very simplistic, and they were just big, flat, open spaces. They had problems where enemy reinforcements would just pop up with zero warning and could just kill your units, and you'd have to restart. There was no like, whoa, we're calling in backup, and it'll be there in 3 turns or something, and position your units appropriately. That's how other Fire Emblems do it. Awakening fucked that up, and they just show up and could wipe you out. So, you know, serious problems, but it's still just such a fun game.
Yeah.
Like, making the children, going through the campaign. Chrom is a cool character, Lucina is a cool character. I love that game. I love the overworld pixel sprites for the characters. I always thought those were kind of cute.
Yeah.
But looking back at 2013, it is not the best that was on offer then.
Fire Emblem is a solid series gameplay-wise, but just ever since that they introduced the whole, like, creating children and couples thing, it's kind of turned into a degenerate anime fan base game where you have to ship couples and then create children. It's like, look at my epic Fire Emblem family. I made fan art of them.
My OC.
Can you give me upvotes for my Fire Emblem fan art?
They doubled down on that in the sequel to Awakening, the follow-up, Fire Emblem Fates. Was that what it's called? I didn't like that game.
There was it was the one where there's 3 different ones, right?
Yeah.
Conquest, Birthright, and
Revelations or something stupid like that. But there was more waifu shit in that game, and I just didn't care for that game at all, pretty much. The next one, though, was a remake of Fire Emblem 2 on the 3DS, and that had none of that because it's a remake of an old game, and most people apparently love that. I haven't played it. The newest Fire Emblem 3 Houses, they've toned it way down. You're not building an entire, Pokemon army of, egg babies that you're perfectly hatching to have the right stats. But still, Awakening's a good game. The best to come out of 2013, though, gotta be Metal Gear Rising. I can't get that game out of my head. I played it a couple years after the fact. That is still gonna stand as one of, the most memorable entries in the whole Metal Gear franchise. Probably Metal Gear Solid 3, Metal Gear Solid 2 and 1 obviously, but I'd take Rising over 4 any day. I'd take Rising over Peace Walker, over 5. Should I scream Rules of Nature at the top of my lungs?
No.
I'll spare you. And Senator Armstrong, the final boss of that game, is just hilariously perfect. He's just beating the shit out of you and telling you how he played football at Texas A&M, or I don't know if he says Texas A&M or Texas State. It might be a fake college he mentions. I don't really remember.
I'm sure it was real. I remember Texas A&M.
Okay,
well, the game.
Correct us down in the comments. And leave a like and subscribe. And join the Bell Squad!
Leave a comment if you're worried about it.
2014. That's pretty much the year that I really started making YouTube videos in full force. And in my 2014 year in review video, I said that Super Smash Bros. 4 was the best game of the year. Not only did I say that, I spit out the absolute shittest take of all time, saying that Smash 4 was a better game than Super Smash Bros. Melee, which is just not true by any stretch of the imagination. And it's not even just about whether you like Melee being fast and technical and stuff. I do. Not everybody likes that. I understand that. But there's a reason that everybody who was big into Smash 4 is not fucking playing Smash 4 anymore. They're playing the new Smash Brothers because it has a similar kind of pace. It's the new one, like 4 was, but it's just better and it's appealing to those same people. Smash 4 was just too slow. Slow is just the only word that comes to mind when I think of that game.
Slow and clunky. But yeah, you're right. It does kind of cement the fact that there will always be only 2 competitive fan bases.
Pretty much.
For Smash Brothers. It will be Melee and whatever the new game is. No one plays Brawl anymore. No one plays Smash 4 anymore. And when the new game comes out, no one's going to play Ultimate anymore unless they do something stupid like take out a character who used to be in an old game.
But, hands down, best game of 2014? Gotta go with Lords of the Fallen. I mean, you just gotta go with Lords of the Fallen.
Absolutely.
Lords of the Fallen, what a goddamn masterpiece. Lords of the Fallen.
I've never felt that.
Put it here, but Lords of the Fallen, best game of the year.
I've never felt my character carried more weight than Lords of the Fallen. I felt like I was actually...
But looking back at 2014, if I had to pick my favorite game now, it would be Lisa the Painful RPG. Of all the Undertale-like, Earthbound-like kinds of games, I might have to say that Lisa or Mother 3 are my favorite. Undertale was my entry point into this stuff, and, because it was new to me, I thought it was the hottest shit of all time. But as I started to play the games that were similar to it, Lisa just captivated me in a way that was unlike the kind of detached fourth wall kind of fun of something like Undertale. It's funny, it's really funny, but it's still like a story. It's a story about a guy, Brad, and daughter, Buddy, and this fucked up world of joy and the Flash with no women. It's just this beefed up, hyper-violent masculinity and mutation and drug-taking and complete degeneracy. It's like a vision of a world without femininity, and it's an apocalypse. It's such a cool game, and the music is just so twisted and strange, and it fits the game perfectly.
Game Maker games in general are very good at highlighting artistic expression, because it strips away all the complexity required of learning how to understand the back end of a video game and the coding and the gameplay mechanics, and it kind of leaves the person the breathing room to focus on artistic style, music, story, and that's why you have a sea of these like dark, weird, and great games like Off and Hylix and Yume Nikki, Undertale, and then Lisa. But I think what sets Lisa apart is that of all of those games, it's the most polished. By far. By far.
Lisa's super, super polished for what it is. Most of those games that you just mentioned are RPG Maker instead of Game Maker, but the point is still exactly the same, that it's this prefabricated tool that lets developers really easily get the basics down, and they can spend their time building the creative stuff. Obviously, Toby Fox or Austin Jorgensen had to spend a lot of time writing code themselves to make their games, but a lot of the basic engine construction was taken care of for them, which allowed them room to breathe creatively. Lisa, I think, is the best example of games to come out of that creative stew. At the time, I said Undertale was my favorite game of 2015. Undertale's still a great game. Has it aged in the way that I would have liked it to? Not really. No. It's fun. It's got a good sense of humor. The music is really good and catchy. I enjoy the story. I legitimately like the meta-narrative in the Genocide run. I think that's cool and interesting. But I also think a lot of the value of Undertale comes from the novelty. Mm-hmm. It comes from seeing these jokes for the first time, or the little trick with the save menu, or the second time it's just not as impactful.
Yeah, I have about 50 hours in Undertale just because I tried replaying it a couple times. Yeah. And it really does suffer on replays, because the whole appeal of it was that everything that you encountered in the world, it was kind of like a Pokemon game where every single NPC had a little line of dialogue they could feed you. But the difference was that what they were going to say was almost always guaranteed to either be interesting or funny. And that doesn't usually happen in a Pokemon game where they tell you, I heard my neighbor had a Pokeball on their table. You can collect it using A. But yeah, the difference here was it was so fun creative, but the problem is the game's so short. So even though every single one of these NPCs is saying something funny and interesting, there's only maybe 40 of them, and you don't realize that until you're done playing the game, and you can say, wow, I had an enjoyable experience all the way through. But what you're not realizing is that enjoyable experience you just played all the way through wasn't that meaty.
Mm-hmm. I think that's a really good observation, actually. And I think it's the reason I like Earthbound way more than Undertale. Earthbound has hundreds of NPCs all over the place in a world that's 10 times bigger. And they're all doing kind of the same thing as the NPCs in Undertale, which is saying a cute little thing. But there's 100 times more of it, to the point where you don't remember every last NPC. And so if you wander around the city on a replay, you're seeing things you don't necessarily remember or easily call to mind when you think about the game. So it's just more substantial, Earthbound. Undertale, kind of thin looking back on it.
Yeah, if you're going for entertaining, it doesn't matter how many NPCs you have to interact with. If you're going for memorable, though, you need to have a lot, because that's what makes it seem like a world, and it makes the world believable as an environment.
Right. And, Undertale, still I think it's a great game. Not trying to shit on all these things that I thought were the best games at the time, but Undertale kind of is a little shallower looking back on it than I thought it was at the time. But let me drop some facts on you about the best game of 2015.
Hit me with the facts.
Oh, you want the facts?
I want the facts.
You can't handle the facts.
I can handle the facts.
Alright, okay. Alright, here are the facts. Bloodborne was the best game of 2015.
That's a bad fact.
It had super stiff competition.
Witcher 3 was Game of the Year.
Bloodborne is From Software's best game. The music, the best in the series. Easy. They used an actual symphony orchestra instead of the sort of digitized instruments that they use for most of the series, and it shows. The compositions in Bloodborne are just beautiful, and they're chilling and fit that gothic atmosphere really, really well. and the art design, it's just so cool. Everything from like the vampire, Bram Stoker, gothic kind of traditional stuff they have, and the really, really out there eldritch nightmare stuff where you're going into like a psychic blood dungeon of the ancient gods, and it's like super cool game.
I will say that for as little experience that I have with Dark Souls and Demon Souls and Bloodborne and Sekiro, I will say that art-wise, Bloodborne is by far my favorite, and I think that it has to do with the signature style of FromSoft being like trying to ride the line between beautiful and decrepit kind of landscapes. So like really magnificent, gorgeous castles that were probably like the first wonder of the world at the time they were in their prime, and now they're like crumbling and falling apart. And while that's interesting, I feel like there's a lot more you can do with that style in kind of a Victorian setting, and especially one with a Lovecraft influence. Because that's what Lovecraft was all about, was like the beautiful and the decrepit, and like creating these eldritch horrors that like kind of play with your imagination.
I think you're right.
Yeah.
Like Dark Souls, they did a lot of that on a kind of mythic level. Like it was about the gods and the giants and the dragons. Bloodborne was subtler almost, where the things that's blending together are like the high Victorian style, and like churches and like institutions and city streets and all that kind of stuff. And it's been like corrupted and kind of bled into by the beastly virus or whatever. I forget what they actually call it in the game. The plague, whatever the beast thing is, that's making everybody beasts.
For however many like skeletons or whatever they put into Dark Souls for you to slash through, that's always felt more empty to me than Bloodborne.
Yeah, sure.
Bloodborne's like a living world, whereas Dark Souls is like ruins that you're walking through, and you're finding out the stories of what took place here, but you're not really a participant in any of it.
And so much of that has to do with the like structure of like who you're fighting and how the game's scenario is presented. Bloodborne is presented over the entire game. It's like a night, like a single night of the hunt. Who you're fighting, back to that point, the hordes of hollows that you're slashing through in Dark Souls, even though people can hollow and you can hollow, and there's that cool element to it. I'm not trying to knock Dark Souls just by comparing it to what I think is a better game, but in Bloodborne, you're fighting other hunters. The other hunters have taken to the streets to kill the beasts, but they're like half aware, or not even, that they're becoming beasts themselves. And when you cut them down, they're screaming at you, "The beast! Burn it!" Like, it's a cool game. It's just a drippingly cool game. I love Bloodborne. It's my favorite game of 2015. Could make a compelling case for Witcher 3. That game is fucking phenomenal and would beat most every game on this list. I like Bloodborne more. 2016 was one of the drier years for video games, kind of like 2014 was. Not that many big or good games came out. At the time, in my 2016 in-review video, I said that Dishonored 2 was my favorite game that year. And honestly, that is for sure one of the best games that year. I don't have much negative to say about Dishonored 2. It performed a little poorly on PC when it came out, but it was a step up above Dishonored 1 in just about every way. It's just a fantastic game. The art style was even better. It looked incredible on whatever engine that they used. It's one of the best looking games I've played. I don't know if you have much to say about Dishonored 2. I don't think you played it.
Yeah, not really. I just commenting on dry years in general. It seems that years tend to be the most fruitful when artistry aligns with financial interest.
Yeah.
There'll be a lot of years where there's really great artistic games like Lisa, but maybe only 5% of people on Steam have played Lisa, or even less than that.
That's being way generous.
Yeah, that's being really generous.
0.05.
Exactly, but then you have the years that are considered really good and not dry, even though Lisa, I wouldn't say, is a dry game or anything like that. The years considered less dry when it's bigger developers pushing out the artistic games, and when it's indie developers pushing out the artistic games, then like...
So is what you're saying that there's always good creative games coming out, but they're not always necessarily the AAAs?
Right.
And that when they're not, it feels like a dry kind of year.
Yeah, because part of what makes a year feel like there's a lot going on is active discussions about the games that have come out. And if you're playing a game like Lisa, I think you even said yourself, did you play that in 2014 or did you not find it until later?
I played that the year after. But I think that's because games like that, the only way people play them is through word of mouth. Like, there isn't the advertising that will draw you to something like Lords of the Fallen. But 2016 had an even better game than Dishonored 2, and I wouldn't play it until the following year when I finally got a VR headset. The best game of 2016 is Superhot VR. And I think for some context, like when we would go to the beach as kids, like the arcades that they'd have there, or just any arcade, Time Crisis was my favorite game. Time Crisis 2, Time Crisis 3, the light guns that would like kick back in your hand as you'd shoot them, and like the mechanics of sort of physically moving to play the game, where you'd put your foot on the pedal to like come out of cover, and to hide you'd remove your foot. So it was a kind of like really involved active thing, and Superhot VR is like next level of that. I think it beats the pants off of regular Superhot on the PC. Like, it's just a way cooler execution of that concept of time moves when you move. It's way cooler if you're the one physically moving and not just hitting buttons on a keyboard. There's really nothing like the feeling somebody shooting a bullet at you and you pausing and just thinking about what you're going to do as it inches towards your face. And you kind of duck out of the way and can watch it float by. It's just goddamn incredible. I think it's the best VR game so far. I haven't played Boneworks. Half-Life Alyx is coming out later this year, 2020. But Superhot VR is the killer app for VR in my opinion right now.
Yeah, I like to compare VR to kind of the early era of gaming, like with the creation of arcades and the first home consoles. And Superhot VR is definitely going to cement itself as maybe not the Pong of VR games, but one of those games, like Asteroid or Centipede. It's going to be historic in terms of what led to VR becoming mainstream. It might be another like 20 or 30 years until VR headsets are in every single household in the same way that consoles are. But we're starting to see the beginning of it, like where it's becoming a serious medium instead of just developer experimental crap. Yeah, I think that with Alyx coming out, Valve has more or less cemented themselves as the Nintendo of VR.
Yeah, for sure. They are the VR company now. They're the hottest VR company around.
Yeah, and if VR becomes hot, and everything points to saying that, yeah, it will become hot, Valve...
Super hot, if you will.
I don't know, like, it's kind of weird to think about, because Valve is already a billion-dollar corporation, like, put with Steam, and then they've got all of their own IPs, and they're going to become even bigger. Yeah. They're just going to keep getting bigger.
It's amazing to me that they're not public yet, that they're still privately held. It'd be cool to see a Valve IPO, but as a person who plays video games, I would rather not see a Valve IPO.
I mean, Facebook was already kind of going to shit before they went public, but it seems like they really, really just fucking went off the deep end after becoming public.
Facebook is like a flood grave mine, essentially. Okay, 2017. I didn't make a year-end video for 2017. You can call that laziness. My defense would be it's when I started working long-ass hours every day. That's my excuse. Buy it or don't. But I didn't make a video saying what my game of the year was then. It's also kind of hard to talk about, like, 2 years ago, what I would have called the game of the year versus what I'd say now. At the time, I would have said Persona 5 was my favorite game. And it still is one of my favorite games of all time. The music is just some of the best. It has one of the best soundtracks. Easy. Every song on there is just like a banger. The ones that aren't are these mellow, vibey ones that are also interesting. And the art style, the interface, the mechanics of the game, the confidant system is awesome. Everything about Persona 5 is awesome. But The reason that I'm not going to say it's my favorite game of 2017 in retrospect is because Persona 5 Royal is going to come out in 2020. And like, I can just recognize on face that Persona 5 that came out 2017 is not the best version of Persona 5. And over the years, honestly, certain problems have become more apparent about how they pace and introduce characters. It's not a perfect game. I would say Nier Automata has only gotten more and more interesting the more I think about it. Looking back, I'd say Nier Automata is the best game of 2017. Where do you start with Nier? The story, fantastic.
Yeah.
So unique. I played some of the first Nier, but I couldn't fucking finish it because it sucks. Bad game with a cool story. Nier Automata is a good game with one of the best stories, and that's what kicks it away.
2017 was a huge year.
For
well, not just video games, but music and video games specifically. You had Persona 5 soundtrack, which is fucking incredible. Nier, also fucking incredible. Cuphead, I liked it.
Yeah.
It had good music.
It's cute. Cuphead's a cute game.
But anyway, yeah, with Nier Automata, there's so much to explore there. Because in the same way that with Dark Souls, like we talked about earlier, you're exploring these kind of ruins and learning about what happened in the past. There's still that common element. But I think that the huge difference between Dark Souls and Nier is emotional connection with the characters.
Oh, yeah.
There is a massive level of emotionality and character relationships in Nier where you're going through these old towns and you're learning about the values of the people that live there, what they want to see happen with the world, and how it conflicts with your own goals. Mm-hmm. And then there's even, I mean, is it worth spoiling the ending?
I think we can. It's Nier at least 3 years ago now, depending on how you look at it. It's 2020 now. But
sure. Yeah, so the big ending.
The way
big
this
reveal.
I mean, which reveal? There's so many. Like the way the story unfolds
of
is
humans never being there.
Oh, yeah. You start to learn that what you thought about what was going on is not really the case. And you learn more about why you as an android are there and how the world got to be the way it is and what the consciousness of these machines are. It's all really cool stuff, and it's just so interesting. It's a game like Bloodborne or Dark Souls, where the more you dig into any little aspect of the game, it's all interesting all the way down. Like, how did the world get this way? You can ask 50 questions down that line of thinking, and every answer is going to be cool. It's just so rich. It's a rich game, and I think it's the best of 2017. And it had stiff competition. Persona 5, Breath of the Wild was 2017. Nier is better. 2018. This is getting harder to structure in the same way that we have been, because this was like a year ago, or a year and a day or so ago. And
what are you talking about? It was last decade.
The best game of 2018 was Red Dead Redemption 2. I would have said that at the time. I'd say that now. There is nothing in 2018 that was better than Red Dead Redemption 2.
What was the name of that one guy who did like a 4-hour video on it?
Noah Caldwell-Gervais.
Caldwell-Gervais. Yeah, there's this guy, Noah Caldwell-Gervais. He made like a 4-hour review on the entire Red Dead series, as well as Gun, which isn't a Red Dead game, but it's in the same vein and style. And one piece of criticism that he gave resonated a lot, and I think it's very true, especially after watching that Clint Eastwood movie, Unforgiven. What he talks about is what's iconic of Western genre is a slow burn story where the reason that gunfights and encounters, which only happen like 1 or 2 times in a movie, even in a long movie, the reason they're so impactful is because every single moment has been building up to that.
Yeah.
And what he established is, in order to have that same trope in a video game, you need the technology necessary to build up in that slow way and still have it be interesting. You couldn't do that in Red Dead 1 because of the technology and the facial capture and the cutscenes just being so outdated.
I would say you still could, but it was still just clawing at what they actually achieved in Red Dead 2.
Right. This feels like the game they wanted to make. Red Dead feels like a game that they were trying to make, but like they maybe got like 80% of what they wanted, and like 20% they had to compromise on.
Mm-hmm. Part of that's just how video games are developed. These aren't movie trilogies where the first, second, and third, beginning, middle, end are planned out over time, and we're just going to do one, then the next, then the next. You see movie sequels, they tend to get worse as they make more of them. Games tend to get better because they're iterating on their designs, and they're doing it over the course of years as the technology is improving. And Red Dead 2, between the 8 years between Red Dead 1 and the sequel, they made full advantage. Because I feel like I should just mention one other game that year, even though I didn't like any as much as Red Dead 2, I'd say Spider-Man for the PS4. That was a great game. I really enjoyed Spider-Man. It kind of reminds me of Crackdown or like Infamous almost, where you're just messing around this city with really cool powers. The combat is fun, like a amusement park ride almost.
That definitely seems to be a solid style of game, is sandbox movement and combat in cities.
Yes.
Crackdown,
Yes.
Prototype, whatever.
There's more. Infamous,
Grand Theft Auto.
sort of, yeah. You don't have superpowers, but
Right.
so much of it is about moving around the
In
city.
GTA 5, you might as well have superpowers. You can buy a jetpack scooter.
That's if you buy the shark cards. The shark
If you
cards?
call Yester, he moved in.
Did you buy enough shark cards?
I need the V-Bucks. Give me the V-Bucks.
Give me that loot.
Grand Theft Auto 5 sucks. They ruined the online. Every single DLC in Grand Theft Auto Online has been new content that requires you to dump more money into whatever edition they just put in, so you can make money using this new edition they put in, which makes you money slightly quicker than the last way. And the worst part is they're doing the same thing to Red Dead Online. They just put in the Moonshiner update, which lets you make moonshine. You can buy your own shack, Brew. You can buy your own shack and make moonshine. And there's even a dance floor and room for a band. Don't you want to put a band in your moonshine shack in Red Dead?
No. 2019. Another year that was like 2017, almost. Wasn't quite as lit. As lit, fam. Am I sounding like the youth?
Yeah.
It wasn't as lit, fam, TBH, as 2017, but it had a lot of good games. Resident Evil 2 Remake, that was really cool. Disco Elysium, I'm not done with it yet, but so good. One of the coolest RPGs I've played. It reminds me a lot of Fallout 1 and 2, but I'm not done. I wouldn't want to say that's my favorite or anything.
Outer Worlds?
Outer Worlds was fantastic.
I would also like to say that while usually ports are insignificant, this year there were 2 big ports which were so massive that it feels like you have to mention them.
Yeah.
Halo Master Chief Collection, Red Dead 2, both on PC now.
Yes.
That's major.
Halo, longtime Xbox exclusive. PC is where it's always belonged deep down in its little heart. I'm really glad to see it on PC now. Right now we only have Reach, but as the months go on, we should be getting the other Halo games that are better. And Red Dead 2, obviously, right at home on PC. Especially Red Dead Online.
Oh my god.
Red Dead Online, as an experience, it makes way more sense on a computer. Because it is kind of like an MMO, and who wants to get on their fucking PS4 with a Bluetooth headset and
Nobody.
do party chat with their
No
gamer
one.
bros? It's way easier to just hop on like Discord or something.
Just like, even in online, like, one of the big differences in online's combat versus single player, in single player, you can slow down the entire world with your Deadeye and it won't affect anything, but when you're playing online, you can't slow down the world for everybody else. So they have to put in ways to kind of counteract that. Your Deadeye does different things. One makes you like less likely to take a bullet. One makes you take damage like a complete tank. And then the other one, the really, really fun one, is called Paint It Black, which just lets you swipe your reticle over any target. It will automatically mark it, and then you just click the button once at the end. It unloads every single shot into every marked target. So with a mouse and keyboard, this means all you have to do is swipe your mouse over your field of vision, mark 8 targets, and take them out in a single revolver clip. It's fucking fun. It's really fun.
My favorite game of the year, though, 2019, it's got to be Sekiro Shadows Die Twice. From Software has pretty much been dominating this list, and Sekiro, it was a departure from what they were doing in a lot of ways. You can't customize your character. You can't wear whatever you want. You can't use 50 different weapons. You just have your katana and whatever samurai tool you want to equip on your prosthetic arm. You are one character. You don't build a character. You are Sekiro. But that like Japanese kind of world that's obsessed with like immortality and honor, it's just such a cool game, and it had one of the coolest ending bosses ever. Ishin the Sword Saint, oh my god, that's one of the best bosses FromSoft has ever made. And for a company like them, where their MO is boss fights, that's a big praise for them, because that last fight, it's got like 4 phases, and it's an enemy that has a very similar moveset to you. They did the same thing, kind of, in Dark Souls 1, where you fight Gwyn as the final boss, where he's this kind of hollowed out husk of a big guy with a sword, pretty much. So he's still coming at you and attacking you in a vaguely similar set of skills that you would have as a player. Dark Souls 3 kind of took that even more extreme, where you're fighting like the personification of every player character in the history of Dark Souls. They're using like spells and swords, but Sekiro got it absolutely perfect, where you've got this crafty old shinobi guy who is like revived from the dead, and he crawls out of his grandson's skin, and he like removes it like a coat, and he's like, Sekiro, let's go. It's so fucking good.
Yeah, where Bloodborne highlighted FromSoft's artistic abilities, Sekiro highlights their combat gameplay abilities, because I will never excessively shit on Dark Souls. I don't have that right. I never played through it all the way. But I think it's fair to say that the UI in Dark Souls is not intuitive.
No.
The dexterity, the character building, the crafting, all of that shit is complex nonsense that is hard to
honestly,
understand.
That is probably the fairest point to criticize the whole series on. Like, it's got a lot of obscure arcane mechanics that honestly just suck.
It's
like,
not FromSoft's strong suit. Their strong suit is art, combat, gameplay.
Yeah.
If they can marry Bloodborne and Sekiro in the future into some kind of new creation where they put equal parts focus in both,
well, coming up, they're making
kick ass.
Elden Ring, which is the collab with George R.R. Martin.
Well, there you
where
go.
He conceived the story in the most part with Miyazaki, and then From is going to make it.
Yeah, I think that covers the art department.
Yeah. So, looking forward to that, but 2019, Sekiro, I would say, is best game of the year.
That's it!
That's it! That's a decade. A decade in gaming. A decade well spent.
I like video games!
Arguably.
Give me video games!
Thank you for watching BruTalc. This has been Brew, Talkin' Powder, and Bro, Talkin' Powder, signing off. Thank you to anybody who's made it this far into the video. On the off chance you're not already subscribed to me, just go ahead and do it. And I might make some new videos or something. Maybe. Yeah, I will. I hope all of you have a great decade. Thanks again.